Hi, everyone. It is perhaps one of the greatest mysteries of God why some people at certain times have such a tremendous impact on the life of the church, and yet later on their memory seems to fade away, and even perhaps the things that they created fade away as well. While at other times, certain saints may make a tremendous impact on the church and yet be remembered. Next week, we're going to explore a little bit about the latter when we talk about St. Simeon Metaphrastes. But today, on November 3rd in the Holy Orthodox Church, the celebration of the famous Georgian saint Nicolas, often called the Radiant Star of Georgia, is someone that we need to briefly speak about. Now, there's not a lot that we can really talk about in terms of this wonderful saint, because as I mentioned, he is one whose life and works have seemed to disappear over the years. St. Nicholas lived in the latter half of the 13th century and lived a good and pious life. And although we don't know much about his beginnings, he was someone who was very, very devoted to the things of the church, particularly the things regarding its scriptures, its canons, its lives of saints, and its liturgy. In fact, he was known as perhaps the greatest liturgist of the Georgian Orthodox Church at that time. Now, of course, in the Orthodox Church of Georgia, we have many, many things that seem to exist in a pristine form that we don't find in any other places. For example, there's lots of translations from Greek into Georgian that have been lost in the other churches. Even sometimes in the Greek church itself, definitely in the Russian church, and we don't really know why these things came about as they did. But the Georgians were able to preserve many of the ancient translations of different things from the Greek that really astound us today. The Liturgy of St. James is a good example, which the Georgian church most likely was still practicing in its fullness for about 1,000 years. And so scholars often look back to the Liturgy of St. James in Georgian as a more pristine example of what that liturgy was in the Greek. But St. Nicholas is someone who took all these things very, very seriously. The Georgian canon for asking the Lord to provide rain is one of his compositions, and many believe that the lesser blessing of water in the Georgian church is also something that he created, along with many, many other works, services of the church, lives of the saints, probably more things than we can even count right now. But strangely enough, many of them are gone. They've disappeared. Yet the memory of the man who created all of these things and was so very important in his time, and perhaps in ours as well, because we really don't know about what happened to him and all these different things that he did. Well, because of this, we have to honor him as being a radiant star that lived at a particular time that did much to enhance the worship of the Georgian church and the faith and piety of all its people. You know, the lives of the saints are littered with people like St. Nicholas, who humbly went about their business, not seeking glory, not looking for any sort of lasting fame, but simply dedicated to the Lord and to his church, and trying as best as they possibly could to enhance the worship of the church at that time. Well, for different reasons, the Lord has decided to sort of put a little glass enclosure over this particular saint, and perhaps we ourselves are not worthy of some of the things that he did during that time. That's why they've been kept secret from us. But the fact that his memory is celebrated still, and the fact that he is noted as someone who was perhaps the greatest liturgy of the Georgian Church, even though we don't have much by him, is something significant and something that we have to take into account. Often in our own lives, we do things, perhaps even for the church, wanting to be noticed, wanting to be somehow recognized for the things that we are doing. Well, in the case of St. Nicholas, this teaches us that our focus should be solely on the Lord and not for any future glory or any sort of things that could come to us down the road because of our efforts now. It's really a great exercise in humility when we see a saint like this, who undoubtedly studied so very hard, spent hours and hours poring over manuscripts, trying to create decent liturgical translations from the ancient Greek, the lives of the saints, all the things that he did, and yet we know so little about him. But that sort of effort never goes unrewarded, and the fact that he is known now for the fact that he was someone that accomplished all this, even though the work of his hands has not come down to us, is very significant and should show all of us the true way of serving the church and attaining true humility before our Lord Jesus Christ. Bye-bye.